Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle how's it going? How you guys doing? Here we are, another week of comic book YouTube content. You know, I've been doing this for 3 years. Isn't that crazy? Time flies. Time definitely flies. And here we are once again with a thumbnail asking ourselves the question, are comic books in a bubble? Yes, we have to address this topic once again. Inquiring minds would like to know, can you even have long-term holds anymore in the comic book market? Well, this video is a little bit different. It's a little bit special because I actually got an email from a viewer of the channel that I thought would be an interesting one to actually respond to, but do it in a video format. A little bit of a shameless promotion. You know, I have YouTube channel memberships in my YouTube now. And if you subscribe to a certain tier, you know, the Darkhawk tier, I too can respond to your questions and maybe do videos like this in the future. So, you know, a little bit of a shameless plug, but I thought that this was an interesting topic. You know, this person mentioned that they were on the newer side of collecting and were curious about the current state of the market and where we might be going. Are comic books still in a bit of a bubble? Can you even have long-term holds as investments? Well, we're going to talk about it here today. But before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I would appreciate it. Help support the channel. You guys know what to do by now. 3 years, guys. 3 years going for this YouTube channel. My God. All right. The email here says, Comic Investing and Journey into Mystery 85. Hello, Mr. Swaggle. I've been enjoying your YouTube videos on comic collecting. I'm a relatively new collector/investor. In the last few years, I've quickly gone from just buying again for fun, either new comics or back issues, but not spending much, to now finding intrigue and excitement in picking up Silver and Bronze Age issues as investment. Once I saw the hobby as a potential investment, my spending steadily increased from a few $100s a purchase to a few thousand. However, even though I'm still buying and recently made another large purchase of A Journey into Mystery 85, market information on recent sales and trends often leaves me nervous after the fact about if I spent too much or made a bad buy. I try to do some research before making a purchase, but I'd hardly call myself a deeply knowledgeable collector. I've already seen purchases I've made in the last year or two drop significantly in price, such as my X-Men 94 and a CGC 8.5. So without going on too much, if you have a minute to spare, what are your thoughts on investing in A Journey into Mystery 85? Is it a solid long term or has it been inflated by Spec? I targeted a CGC 5.0. How should one feel about the market now? Should Silver Age remain good investments? I've also seen prices on another key I've been watching, ASM 14, drop a bit. A local comic store has had a raw one for a while now that looks in the 5.5 to 6.0 range that so far has not sold. Thank you for your time, person. All right, well, a lot to unpack in this email here, which is why I thought maybe doing a video about it would actually be more efficient. Feel free, guys, in the comments if you guys have specific answers to this person's specific inquiry here. But, you know, I thought, you know, in this video, we should start sort of a little more abstract in the top level. Maybe we can give a little bit of specifics and nuance to some of the questions he has here. And then, of course, you know, wrap it up with sort of the bigger takeaways. But we're going to have to go line by line because there really is a lot to unpack. So, you know, he mentioned here being on the newer side last couple of years, you know, going from, you know, just your typical kind of fun collector to, you know, your investor sort of person. But, you know, this is something that, you know, I've even made mention in my journey of a comic book collector when I did my whiteboard video. I mean, this is the path that a lot of people go on. And I realize that there's a lot of people who watch my YouTube that feel like it's kind of cringe, you know, to like say, oh, investing in comic books. I know that there's a whole subset of the comic book collecting community that feels like that term is cringe. But here's the deal. I mean, whether you view yourself as a investor or not, I mean, if you're spending 4 figures on a book, you know, high 4 figures on a book, 5 figures on a book, at a certain point, unless like, you know, you have, you know, an extremely high income paying job where, you know, none of the stuff matters, it's just like funny money, then yeah, okay, that's one thing. But if you're spending that amount of money, I mean, I think that you're probably, you know, thinking of these books as a little bit of investment. I mean, I don't think that you just spend 5 figures for fun. I mean, maybe some people do, but I think most people, the majority of comic book collectors have to at least think of this stuff from an investment point of view. I mean, at the very least, you know, I think most people should be, when they buy stuff, should be aspiring to buy things right, pay what is effectively fair market value or less than a fair market value. And then, hey, at the worst case scenario, 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, when you feel like it's time to move on with your book, you can get some money back. I mean, ideally, you would be able to get more than what you paid for it. But even if you say have to liquidate to a comic book dealer and they only pay you 60% of market, hopefully by the time like the rate of inflation, has driven the prices up, you're going to be made whole on some of that money. Although, now you're talking about opportunity costs and all that sort of thing, but that's okay. You got to enjoy the book for 20 years. So I think that is something that inevitably is going to happen for a lot of people. They're going to like transition over to being this kind of investor mindset. Now, here's the tricky thing that you have to think about, and we're going to relay it back to the title of this video. Are we in a comic book bubble? Are we still in a bubble? Clearly we were in a COVID bubble of some kind. We saw all the prices get inflated. And for a lot of people who got into the hobby at that time, which frankly was a lot of people, I know there's a lot of comic book collectors who watch my channel and all that stuff. And a lot of you guys are like, well, I bought my copy of, X-Men 1 back in 1995. And it's like, a lot of people didn't buy their copy of X-Men 1 back in 1995. You know what I mean? So a lot of people came into the hobby. I mean, that's part of the reasons why the prices got so inflated. There was a speculative bubble that happened at that time. So this is an unprecedented time where we're seeing a lot of corrections in comic books. I mean, no other point in history have you had prices drop by, 40, 50, 60, basically 100% in some cases. I mean, literally, you have books that tripled, in the comic book boom of 2021. And now when you look at their GPA graphs, they're selling for less than what they were going for, prior to the boom. So that has never happened in the history of comic books, as far as you've been able to track values and data on comic books. I mean, if you go into GPA and you look at all the charts, throughout all time, I mean, in that early years, when CGC was starting at like 2008 through like 2012, that section, is still a little bit, green as far as like what the actual data was. But at the same time, you could still see that, no book went up by 1,000% or, 3x and then actually had a correction all the way back down. Like, you've had little ups and downs and things like that. Now, it is an interesting thing that when we did get the turn of 2011 and 2012, when we got, that first Avengers movie and we entered what is now known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there was a turn for a lot of values of comic book. Clearly, the movies had an effect of bringing in people to comic book collecting. And of course, that was the perfect time when you had all these people that grew up in the 90s, people like me, that had the nostalgia for it. And now they were ready to, buy back into their nostalgia. So you've had this perfect storm of people coming back into the comic book collecting hobby. So when we go back to this idea of are comic books in a bubble, like has everything been inflated by MCU Spec? The answer to that is yes, but at the same time, does that mean that, we're doomed to fall off the cliff in this next year? Well, I'm not really so sure. How long do we think that there's going to be, value in comic books? I mean, you still have to remember that an AF-15 has 12 cents on the cover, which means once upon a time, the price was 12 cents, and over the course of, these 60 years since the book has been, out there, it has gone up, with the rate of inflation, if not more so. And not all books are the same. Some books are different. And this is where you have to have, that little very, very granular view of the statistics and this data to really, really unpack that. So why am I saying all this? Well, I'm saying this to kind of lead it back to what this person was asking about, which is this idea of, hey, is Journey into the Mystery 85 like a good purchase? Is this a good investment book and da-da-da? Well, the answer to that question is both yes and no. So that's right. I'm going to be on the buy side and the sell side for that particular answer. And this is the thing that, I've talked about. Like, I have a video on my channel, and it's really a shame because, like, you make some of these videos and, like, I look at this stuff. I'm like, this is one of my best videos, but people don't really care about like old content. Like everybody wants like whatever is new, the daily content, and everyone wants dramatic, market is crashing and all that sort of stuff. But one of my best videos was like, the golden rule or my number one tip for comic book investing. I think I did this in the same week, but the idea is this is like, all you have to worry about is what you buy a book for and then what you inevitably sell a book for. That's ultimately all that really matters. So when you have a Journey into Mystery 85 and you're like, okay, is this a good investment book? Well, it depends. Like, what did you buy it for? And then what will you sell it for inevitably? That's really is going to be the answer to your question. Is it going to be a book that was a good investment? If you bought it right now, I think the fair market value for a 5.0 is say like in the $2,000 something range. If you found it in the wild, like at an antique shop for $1,000, and then you sold it right now for $2,500, then absolutely, Journey into Mystery is a great investment book. If you bought it right now at $2,500 and you held it for 10 years, is it going to be a good investment book? Well, no one knows. Like we don't actually know. And this is where, sort of the strategy with this idea of buying and holding and investing in a comic book isn't something that is, say, the most reliable or the most effective strategy when it comes to comic book investing and collecting. I mean, think about all the dealers that have these comic books, right? Like we all know that AF-15s have gone up year over year, yet dealers still sell them. And why is that? Because those dealers need to take short-term profits from all the books that they have. I mean, you have to wonder, it's like, well, why don't dealers, whenever they have an AF-15, why don't they just hold it? I mean, look at it. Like, 20 years ago, it was worth, $1,000. And then today it's worth, $15,000. Why wouldn't they just hold it? By that logic, 10 years from now, it's going to be worth $30,000. And the reason for that is because it's better to take short-term gains. It's a good investment if they bought it for $1,000 and then they immediately sold it for $2,000. Like, who cares if the book goes up, to $15,000 10 years later? They can take that $1,000 now of capital and use that and apply it to other collections, other books. And they just continue to take short-term gain after short-term gain, and they inevitably are able to, lift the value of their inventory. And that's really how dealers are successful doing it. I mean, this idea of like buying and holding, it's really only so effective if you're somebody out there who say, let's say you're well-to-do, you have millions of dollars, and you can just go into Heritage Auction and buy, an Action 1, or something extremely rare, very, very rare Golden Age books that only come up for sale every 4 years or whatever the case is. And you can afford to buy that. And then you can sit on it for 20 years. Well, yeah, like in that instance, that's going to be okay because you already have, the capital to like buy some of these huge books to where there's always going to be some demand at that end of the scale for these types of things. Whereas, A Journey into Mystery 85 is a great, great, great book that is always going to be popular. It's something that I actually really love. I mean, I have it one myself and I'm not going to sell it. But is a 5.0 not going to not be available? I mean, I think a 5.0 is actually a good grade to be in. I think it's a great grade to be in because you look at the grade scale. But if someone wants that book right now, could they find it? If they had, a savvy enough, ability to search, they would be able to do it. So as far as like it being able to be something that is going to guarantee yield higher returns, well, you can't predict it. You can't predict it. Now, granted, I think if you look at the history of that book and you look at the graphs, like all the way back from 2008, you see that, yes, year after year, this book has gone up a little bit, Journey to Mystery 85. Now, again, it's that question of, is this going up because we've seen Tom Hiddleston play Loki in the Loki film? Perhaps, but the thing is like, a lot of people I'm sure in the comments are yelling right now or typing like, oh, the MCU is inflated, MCU is dead, comic superheroes are dead and all that sort of stuff. They might be right. That might be the case. But the reality is we don't know. And prior to all of these movies, there has been some return of value on some of these comic books. Not all of them, but some of them. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Perhaps the kids that grew up on the Marvel movies, 30 years from now, kind of like how we came out of the 90s boom, will also have a nostalgia to some comic books. Or maybe they won't care. Maybe they're going to buy NFTs and no one's actually going to be collecting comic books at all. These are all the questions that people think about and talk about. And this is why the only sort of reliable strategy to have in comics as investments is to take short-term gains. That's really the only reliable strategy to have. If you have the ability to, you bought a book 15 years ago and it's gone up by $20,000, and you had a recent version of that book sell on Heritage Auction for whatever, $30,000, you should probably sell your copy. If you're excited, you're just like, oh, dude, I have 25K of equity in this book. Like, yeah, you should sell it. Then it would be a very, very good investment for you. But, it's a lot. Not a lot of people want to operate with their collection that way. So what is my answer to your actual question? Is it a good purchase? Yeah, I think it's a great book. I think Silver Age is great books. I think, it's always going to be a key. I think people are always going to cherish it, generally speaking. And if you have the ability to sit on it for however long you want to sit on it, then yeah, I think that you're probably not going to lose money. I think you'll probably be okay. But the question is, if you're trying to say maximize your investments on it, right? Like, what is the actual year-over-year return of the value of that book? Like, perhaps that book only grows at 5%, maybe even less. Maybe it only grows at 3%, based on, the history of the comic book. Well, then would it be a better use of your money to take, say, that $3,000 and put it in a, interest-bearing savings account that pays you 5% versus actually having the comic book? Well, yeah, probably, if you're trying to min-max, your return. But that's not nearly as fun, right? It's not nearly as fun as having the comic book. So, these are the things you have to weigh, you have to talk about, you have to, decide for yourself if you think it is a good long-term hold, and is it inflated by, spec? Like, yes and no, but is that spec, valid? I mean, it's like, is Tesla stock inflated by spec? Yeah, absolutely. But does that mean that people didn't make money buying Tesla stock? Well, no, right? They did make money, and that's the other thing too with the whole like investment speculation, spec book, and all this sort of stuff, and the terminology that is thrown out in comic books, where I feel like there's a lot of people that say, oh, spec is dead, or like you can't invest in these books and all this sort of stuff. And again, all that really matters is, did you buy it for less than what you sold it for? And if you did, then it was a good spec book. Like, people can say Eternals 1 is dead spec, but it's like, yeah, because you didn't sell at the height of the market in 2021. That was the idea. You were supposed to buy it in 2020 when everybody was talking about how this could blow up, and then sell it when it actually blew up. That's one of those things. Last little thing, ASM 14 has dropped a little bit at a local comic book store. There's a raw one, 5.5 to 6.0 range. Yeah, this is the other thing too. I think you have to decide, especially now in this market. Again, we're in unprecedented times, right? There's a lot of sales. I think if you look at like the Go Collects and the GPAs and the thing. Oh, gee, how long is this video? Oh my God, we've been going on for a long time. Okay, I got to stop rambling here. Hopefully this is good. I probably lost all you guys. The one of the things you have to look at is the difference of how often is this book being bought it now or buy it now going on, and how often is this book just selling at auction. I think that that's one of the things, and I'll just quickly show you guys this just so you guys can get a picture. Even if I go to last sales, and we're not talking about the 85, but even if I go to last sales, you can just see, like, here's an 1125, a 4575, a 1499. Some of these numbers you can tell are probably auction numbers because they're like uneven, versus say this 3900 was probably a buy it now, or this, these all look kind of like auction numbers to me. But, you have to sort of decide and understand, like, are people actually buying this? Meaning, is there actual demand? Or a lot of these books just selling because people are just $1 start, auction, here we go. And the market just has to absorb it. And probably a lot of the people that are swooping up, a lot of those books are comic book dealers who have the, ability to build out their inventory and sit on these books and then, wait until someone at a comic book show actually buys it from them. So that's the other thing too. So if you're talking about like certain books, like A Journey to Mystery 85, is it a good one to buy? Well, what is the demand side of that, and what did you end up paying for it, and all those sort of things. And there are certain books that sell more than others. Like, your X-Men 94, although it has had a major correction, is probably always going to be a book that has demand. Like, if you put it on eBay, priced at current fair market value, someone's probably going to buy it. Like, I would be willing to bet normalizing the value of it, with your Journey into Mystery 85, you'd probably be able to sell your X-Men 94 faster than you would be able to sell your Journey into Mystery 85, even with Loki Season 2 going on. Well, let me kind of wrap it up and tie it back to this, topic of the video. Are we still in a comic book bubble? Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, but everything is like kind of in a bubble, right? I mean, nobody really knows how long comic books as collectibles are going to be desired. Nobody really knows what's going to happen in the future. What book is a good investment? I mean, we all think, as far as we can tell, A15 has gone up year after year, every year for the last 60 years. So in theory, it should go up in the next 10 years. But you can't predict it, right? You can't predict it. I mean, maybe nobody's going to care about comic books. They're almost 100 years old. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. I better wrap it up now. What do you guys think about this question? Do you guys have any answers for our friend right there? Do you guys think we're still in a bubble? Again, unprecedented times we live in right now with all the correction. If you watch my index videos, of course, I talk about the macroeconomic policies, interest rates, all of that stuff plays a big role in the current state of comic books. It's probably a decent time to buy, although I think we're going to feel more pain and more hemorrhaging for a little bit of time still. Probably another at least 6 to 9 months, before we can maybe call a bottom. And again, we're not really going to be able to call a bottom. And again, we don't actually know if comic books behave the same way as, say, the S&P or even that of, the crypto market, which, again, Bitcoin is pumping. So maybe there's going to be a lot of crypto people buying comic books once again. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. That was my long-winded video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys enjoyed this format. Of course, like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.